Hello, and welcome to another episode of My Faith is Bigger Than My Fears podcast. I am your host, Tamala Ingram, and again, welcome to another episode. I took a little break last week. There was no new episodes, but I'm happy to be back, and I had needed time away. I just needed a break. I needed to reset. I needed to refocus. I needed to really just hear from the Lord. So I went into fasting and praying, which is so important. So I just pray that this episode will bless someone as much as it's blessed me. And I pray that you all had a blessed week. I pray that you are enjoying the month of July. I can't believe we're already in the middle of July. But I pray that God has been answering your prayers or giving you clarity or giving you directions and instructions that you have been asking Him for. And so, with that being said, today's episode is how to be in the presence of God. And then that means what are the steps that you need to be in the presence of God? Stay tuned. All right, so let's jump back into today's episode, being in God's presence, and what does that look like? What does it mean to be in God's presence? And so what I came up with is God's presence. When we're in His presence, it offers us joy, it offers us peace, it offers us protection and spiritual growth and guidance and strength and faith to help us as believers to overcome when things are difficult or challenging in our life. But yet we also have this fulfillment of life because we are children of God, and also because we're in His presence. So I came up with 4 steps that I feel like are very important to be able to stay in God's presence. You get into God's presence, but how to actually stay in God's presence. Number 1, you have to have an authentic relationship with the Lord. He has to know you and you have to know Him. If we think about John 15:5, and you say, it says, he that abide in me, I in him. That means that you have a relationship with the Lord and He knows you and you know Him. Also, I said, acknowledging that God is everywhere. That's one thing. He is omnipresent. We know that God sees and hears everything. So remember that it doesn't matter what you might be thinking or feeling, or you might feel like, Lord, do you hear me? Are you seeing me? Yes, He's everywhere. He's omnipresent, meaning He understands. He sees your prayers. He sees my prayers. He's seeing our family members' prayers. He's hearing our thoughts. He knows our thoughts. So we have to acknowledge the fact, 1, that God is who He is, and 2, that He's all-knowing. So if we know that we serve an all-knowing God, we should be able to realize that God is in every single detail in our life, and that He is always, He always wants us to be in His presence, meaning He wants us to have a relationship with Him. He wants us to talk to Him. He wants to know what's going on with us. Even though He already knows, He wants to hear it from us. Lord, I'm having a hard time. Lord, I need help. Lord, I thank you. Lord, I just want to be in your presence. Lord, I appreciate you. Lord, I don't know how to get out of the situation, but I'm trusting you. Those are ways to actually usher into His presence, right? Especially when we're into Thanksgiving. It says, enter His courts with praise and enter All right, so if we look at Psalms 104, verse 4, it says, enter into His gates with thanksgiving and into His courts with praise. Be thankful to Him and bless His holy name. That is a way to usher into God's presence, because we're giving thanks. We're recognizing who He is. We are entering to His gates with thanksgiving. We are speaking, or we're thinking about the goodness of God, and we are actually giving Him praise. So that's a way to be in God's presence, is 1, like I said, have an authentic relationship with Him, really knowing God, really knowing the Word. The Word is God and God is the Word. So if you do not know God, I would encourage you to get to know him. But I also encourage you to know his word. His word is how you know more about who he is and have a relationship with him through his word. So number 2, prayer. Oh my gosh. Prayer is, I feel like, it's, first of all, it's essential. We have to pray. If you are not praying and asking, the Lord cannot, he's not hearing your voice. Or sometimes, like in prayer, like I said, you don't have to be verbally speaking in prayer as well. So I'm going to talk about prayer is an essential part of being in God's presence. One, prayer is an intimate relationship with the Lord and a conversation between you and God. That is so powerful right there. Whether you are verbally speaking to God, praying in your heart or your mind, or in complete worship, like I just said, that Psalms 104, that's complete worship. That's a worship form of ushering into God's presence. Prayer is not a way just to come to God for only the big things or things that you need him to do in your life, but God cares also about the small details of your life. He wants you to come to him in prayer. He wants you to be able to feel like, oh God, you only care about the big things. No, God cares about everything. If you think about it, in it says, cast our cares on him, for he cares for us. That means he wants us to cast everything on him. So I just want to encourage someone with that. And then that's why prayer is so powerful. And also remember this, the enemy cannot hear your prayers. The prayers that you're thinking or in your heart, he cannot hear those. So remember that as well. Only God can hear your thoughts, and only God knows your heart. So we have to also know that it's an intimate, like I said, that intimate prayer time with the Lord, when you are just sitting still, when you are not saying absolutely anything with your mouth verbally, but you are saying a prayer in your mind or in your heart or in your thoughts. God already knows what you're asking. So also, if you notice when you're in prayer and you have a negative thought that comes through, of course, that's the enemy. So during that time, we have to know how to have our thoughts held captive. That's so important. So even during prayer time, we have to know that we can ask the Lord, Lord, take that thought captive. And then also, when you are feeling like there's something that's hard for you, or you don't know how, um if, especially like if you're in a hard situation and you feel like, Lord, how am I going to make it, you have to know how to speak positive things over yourself, as if God is speaking those positive things to you right then in that situation. So let's talk about that. Have you ever found yourself in a situation that you feel like you could not keep going, you wanted to give up, and the enemy is saying to you all of a sudden, oh, just give up, or you're not going to be able to do that. But then you hear this calm, still voice cheering you on. That's the Lord. And he's saying, you can make it, you can do it. Have you ever started having those positive thoughts? Because one, those negative thoughts were held captive by the Lord. Two, now the Lord is reassuring you during, even though you're not verbally speaking, but you might be thinking, Lord, I need help. I need you to help me get through this. I don't want to give up. And he's cheering you on. That is a form of prayer. Prayer is so powerful. Like I said, it's so essential that as believers and as children of God, we should be in prayer, meditating, hearing God on a regular basis. If you are not in prayer with the Lord, then I don't know how you're actually having a real relationship with him. How are you hearing from him if you're not in prayer? How are you knowing what direction to go in if you're not in prayer? How do you know which way or what God is wanting you to do in that season if you're not in prayer? Prayer is so powerful. Prayer changes things. Being in God's presence changes things. Being able to be in worship changes things. Sometimes the pain is so hard that you can't even get words out. But yet, if you just sit in your thoughts, and God hears your thoughts. He hears your heart. He knows exactly what you're saying. That is all that matters. So remember, number 2, prayer is essential, and that's a form of being in God's presence. Number 3, being in nature. Being in nature is being still with God, meaning listening. You're quiet. You can feel God's presence when you're out in nature. Why? Because He created it. He created us, right? So when you're out in nature with God, you can feel His presence. You can hear the birds. You can hear the insects. You can see, you can hear the water running. You feel God's presence in the wind. You look at the clouds. You look at the sun. You can see Him and feel Him when you're out in nature. So I always say that being out in nature, being at the beach, being in on a hike, being at the park, being on a trail, those are another form of way of being in God's presence. And I want to read Psalms 37 verse 7 to you all as well, because I think that when we realize when we are in God's presence, especially out in nature, God is definitely giving us what we should feel like when we're in His presence. So Psalms 37 verse 7 says, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently on Him. Do not fret because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked schemes to pass." Meaning, when you are out in nature and you are really trying to hear, and it says wait patiently on Him, sometimes we are so quick to want an answer for God, and He's telling us we have to wait patiently on Him. And sometimes He wants us to just rest in Him during this time, even in nature. Like I said, sometimes in nature, you don't even need to say anything. You just really need to just let Him do the talking and let Him show you. There's been multiple times when I'm out in nature and I realize the birds are speaking to me, or I can look up and see the clouds and I feel like the Lord is speaking to me even that way. Just being quiet and being still in nature is another form of being in God's presence. Now, number 4 is the big one: fasting. Fasting is a direct response to being in God's presence. Mind you, fasting and praying go together, right? They go together. So there are multiple ways to fasting, right? You can fast from social media. You can do a Daniel fast. You can fast from foods. You can fast from, coffee. There's so many different ways. But why should we fast? I do only depending on what kind of fast. If I'm really trying to hear from the Lord and get direction, I'm gonna do maybe a 4 or 5 day fast, or even longer, whenever the Lord tells me to stop. And I'm only doing water only during this fast. I am starving my flesh. Why? Because when you're starving your flesh, you are more clear. First of all, your mind is more clear, and it's more easier, and it's more like I said, clearer for you to hear from the Lord. Because when you're filled up with all that junk, food, sugars, coffee, sweets, social media, all that overload, it literally bogs your body down. You're weighted down. So what you're doing when you're fasting and when you are only drinking water during this time, you are literally not only starving your flesh, but you are decreasing your flesh and you're increasing your spirit, man. You're increasing your spirit to be able to hear from God. I'm talking about when you are so desperate to hear from the Lord and you need to go, you don't know which way to go. You've done all you think that you can do. And God's like, thank you. Thank you for going on a fast. Thank you. Thank you for coming to me. Thank you, because you and me, I'm going to say this. I needed to go on a fast especially when things started getting out of control. When I was like, Lord, I don't know what to do. I don't know what you want me to do. So going on a fast, especially when it's something so important that you are needing to hear God instructions and you need to know that it's his voice and his voice only, go on a fast. Go on a fast when you are starving your flesh. That's important. Also, like I said, fasting is always is a way to know a clear and direct instructions from God. We see that fasting allows prayers to be answered. I'm gonna give you an example for that in a second here. Um, Meaning that when you are fasting and God is answering your prayers, we are depending. I am depending on God. You're depending on God. When you are starving your flesh and you are saying, God, I need to hear from you. I need to know, what are you wanting me to do in this season? Where do you want me to go in this season? What is the direction? Give me the instructions. We are saying, I depend on you, God. I need you. I can't do this, and I'm not going to do it on my own. So that is what fasting does. And I also want to talk about this as well. When we talk about fasting, and fasting also, it means faith too. Let me just read what I'm talking about right now, because I'm gonna go to the book of Ezra. We're going to talk about Ezra chapter 8:16. I'm going to read this out loud because this, I feel like, talks about why fasting and praying is so important. Okay, Ezra 8, verse 22. For I was ashamed to request of the king an escort of soldiers and horsemen to help us against the enemy on the road, because we had spoken to the king, saying, the hand of our God is upon all those for good who seek him, but his power and his wrath are against all those who forsake him. So we fasted and entreated our God for this, and he answered our prayers. So this is saying, Ezra is saying that he literally would boast and talk about how good God was and how good God was. God was their protector and God was with them, and God, he would continue to provide for them. He would protect them through whatever they were going through. So Ezra did not want to go to the king and asked for help as they were getting ready to go on this journey. And he knew that their enemies were going to be ahead, right? So Ezra had called a fast. Here we go. Faith, fast. He called a fast, and then he went forth. He asked God to protect them. God answered their prayers, and he protected them, and they got to their destination safely. That is what prayer does with faith. Now I want to talk about this real quick, because a lot of us are taking faith without works is dead out of context. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean work with your hands. It doesn't mean work like, oh, you put all this work in and God is iron. No. Faith without works means faith. It means your faith is working or your faith is not working. That's what that means. So I want to talk about faith without works is dead. This is in James 2, chapter verse 14 through 23. I'm going to start at the beginning. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to do 15. If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say to them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give them the things which are need for their body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, it does not have works, is dead. Now we're going to go down to 19. You believe that there is one God. You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, with faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham, our father, justified by works when he offered Isaac, his son, on the altar? Do you see that faith was working together with his works, and by works faith was made perfect? And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. And he was called the friend of God. Okay, so did you not see what that faith without works is saying? Faith without works is saying Abraham was basically going to sacrifice Isaac, his son. He knew he knew that at the end of the day, he said that I know that I will see my son again during the resurrection, right? So his faith was in God at the whole time. Like, God, already you gave me Isaac. I know that I'll see him again. And if you are telling me to sacrifice my only son, I trust you enough. That was faith without works. That is that working together. Believing that at the end of the day, that however the situation was going to go, Abraham was still going to put his faith in his works, which is his faith working in God. So that's what faith without works mean. It doesn't mean you're going out here and you're physically working at your job, you out here training, or you out here sometimes serving. That's and to be seen, because that's another topic. But faith without works is meaning your faith is working. So I want to clear that up. But that's what fasting means too. I want to say that faith and fasting and prayer are so important, actually, as far as I feel like the most essential. All of them are, but if you don't have a relationship with the Lord, then none of this is going. You fasting. It's like, what am I fasting for? Your prayers. What are your prayers doing? Your worship, is your worship sincere? Because we also have to remember that God knows our hearts and he knows our motives. So if your motives are, I'm only fasting because I need God to, get me this money, or I'm only fasting because I need God to give me this new job, but once I get it, I'm not going to talk to him anymore. Like, I'm only in worship, but my hands are dirty. Are you lifting up holy hands? Because it said in Psalms 34, he that has clean hands and a pure heart. Yeah, that's deep right there. Yeah. So I just wanted to share, these are the ways to stay in God's presence. I'm sorry, I'm looking up another scripture I was thinking about. That you really have to, it's Psalms 24. Yeah, Psalms 24, verse 4. He who has clean hands and a pure heart, and he who has not lifted up his soul to idol. So that's another thing too. Like, I'm saying, like, if your prayers are not genuine, if your heart posture is not pure, if your hands are filthy, this is a time in order to get into God's presence. And how do you stay in God's presence? We as believers, one, we should be fasting. That is essential. That I feel like that is a requirement as well. Now, how you fast, I feel like that's a way that you should go to the Lord and ask him, like, Lord, what fast are you wanting me to do this week? What are you wanting me to take a break from? What is it, something that I'm over consuming? And he might tell you, you need to fast from social media. You need to fast from coffee. You need to fast from TV. You need to fast from reading certain books. I love reading different type of genre of books, but sometimes, like, even during fast, there's some books I just can't read. So I'm just constantly, like, reading my Bible and in constant communication as far as, prayer, meditating, which is just, like I said, sitting still with the Lord. And also just being out in nature a lot when I am fasting so I can hear. Also, I want to say that, like we said, being a relationship with the Lord is number one first. Number one is relationship with him. And then God will show you. He will show you what he wants you to do. He will teach you and guide you. That's the whole point of being in God's presence. So I want to just say, that these 4 steps all go together, like I said, with being in God's presence. And I just want to encourage you and someone to know that God's presence, like, once again, like I said, is peace, it's joy, it's strength, it's faith. It helps us as believers. It guides us, right, to be able to overcome difficult times in our life, but yet it's also fulfilling our lives to be able to be in God's presence. Also, I want to encourage you this week to, if God is calling you to go on a fast, that you obey, because obedience is better than sacrifice. Sometimes we don't understand why God is calling us to a fast, or he's calling us to go out and be in worship, or he's calling us to actually sit in prayer time with him a little bit more often than most days, or he might want you to stay in there a little bit longer. Don't be in routine as well when it comes to being in the presence of God. Just be in his presence when you feel the urge, and also when he is pulling on you to be in his presence too. Sometimes, it's like, well, I have to pray at this time. I got to be in his presence at this time. I got to go to my prayer closet at this time. And you make it a routine. And it's like, are you really hearing from God? Are you really having that set time with him is fine, but there might be other times that he wants to talk to you, and it might not be at that set time. Do you understand? If that's what I'm saying, if that makes sense. Also, get in God's presence. Get in God's presence this week. Stay in God's presence. We are supposed to be in his presence daily. His word, worship, prayer, and relationship with him keeps us in God's presence. So again, I am your host, Tamala Ingram. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of My Faith is Bigger Than My Fears podcast. And I pray that we continue to encourage each other, that we motivate each other, that we put our faith and trust in God, and we conquer our fears one episode at a time. Remember, new episodes come out every Monday. And until then, stay in God's presence. Get in his presence. His presence is all you need. Have a good day.